Today on the Katana Tone Lab, we're going to unravel the mystery of patch compatibility. I bet you didn't know that not all patches will work on all Boss Katana amps. Stay tuned to find out more. All right, test, test, test. 1, 2, 1, 2. Mary had a little lamb. All right, friends, Brian here from Guitars and Cigars and the Katana Tone Lab. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. Hope everybody's having a marvelous week. And welcome to another edition of our Learn Your Katana series, the Katana Classroom. Today, we're not even going to touch a guitar. We're not even going to touch an amp. We're not going to do anything with my Generation 3 212. What I want to talk to you about is something I'm seeing lots of questions about. I read up on a lot of different forums. I've actually gotten some emails from some of you asking questions about various aspects of these amazing amps. And one of the reoccurring issues people are talking about is compatibility of patches. So the Tone Studio, which is what this is here, is owned and made by Boss. And they do it specifically for the Katana amp series. There are other pieces of equipment that use this core software, but really most people, this is what they use it for. Unless they've got the floorboard version of it, then they'll use it as well. Now, they have 3 generations of these amps. They have a generation 1, 2, and 3. That is a generation 3. I have a generation 2, an MKII that the power head finally blew on. Works otherwise. I can use it as a interface for my computer, and then I can run Amplitude, or there's other things I can run with it. So that isn't junk. I haven't, pitched it out in the trash, but I can't get any sound out of it. So that's why I upgraded to my 212 that I have now. So the program itself writes little bits and pieces of a program called a TSL file. So you'll see a name.tsl if you save it somewhere on your computer. And the TSL is a file format, kind of like if you saw a document that's a PDF, or if you had a Microsoft Word document that's .docx or .exl because it's an Excel file. That's just really nerd talk for the computer people, that's the file format that Boss uses to write all of their patch files for. One of the things I want to stress with people is a thing called naming convention. Anybody who does programming or does anything with computers, or you do a lot of, say you're an accountant, you've got lots of files and what have you, naming convention and sticking with that convention is very important. So when you're making a new patch, we'll just say we're gonna make the B.R. Wilson God patch. Always name it as such .tsl. Go into your computer. Let's get rid of that. Right-click in the middle. Go to New. New folder. It's going to drop a folder in the middle of your desktop, and you're going to call it whatever you want. And then you save that folder. Now, where you put it in your computer is completely up to you. You want to leave it on the desktop, you want to leave it in your documents, doesn't make a difference. Just know where you put it so you can access it. So when you get a new TSL file that you've saved, the BR Wilson God mode, you're going to name it that .tsl, and then you're going to save it in this folder. And then in this folder here, you'll have all of the patches that you've made so you can go back to them and use them. Say you go out and buy a new amp, or you get a new computer and you need to load everything up again. Having all of these as files is pretty nice. And then if you want to share them, even better. All you need to do is just send someone this tiny, tiny, tiny file. It does not save any sounds. So it's not like an MP4 or an MP3 or a WAV file. All it does is it writes it in a thing called a script, and it has all of the amp settings, all of the cabinet simulations, everything you did to that patch to get to the sound you want in the Tone Studio. It saves all of those. And then what the Tone Studio does is it takes that file and reads it, sets all the parameters, bang, you've got the exact patch. That's how that whole thing works. That's, Nerd 101 for the day. So, for an example, when I saved the Alex Rhodes patch that I made, that's exactly what it's called, alexrhodes.tsl. And it just, you'll thank me if you start doing that today and move forward. You do that every time. You will thank me later because you'll be looking for a patch, pulling out what little hair you have left, going, where in the did it go? If it's in this file and it's done the same way every time, you'll have no problem accessing it. Again, word to the wise from the fool who's lost everything numerous times. Do that and back up your files. That's the other nerd thing I'm going to tell you. Figure out a way to back up your files. You don't have to back up everything on your computer, but anything that you've got specific, especially like your patches, you want to make sure that you do a backup of those files somewhere. Get a thumb drive, get an external drive, something. Back them up. Keep them separate from your computer. Someone steals your computer, the house falls in, the dog comes up and pees, whatever happens, your computer dies, you've lost those files forever, possibly. Do a backup. So, all right, I've digressed. All right, so back to compatibility. The rule of thumb is there is no backwards compatibility with these amps. So let me elaborate on that. If I write a patch in my Generation 3 amp and the Generation 3 Tone Studio, because each generation has their own version of the Tone Studio. So that's why it's important when you go on, sign into Boss, find your specific amp, download that Tone Studio for that amp. Because if you try to use a Gen 3 on a Gen 1, it's not going to work. Equally, if you're trying to use a Gen 1 with a Gen 3 amp, it may work, but you're not going to get all the features because the software for Gen 1 does not reflect the monstrosity that sits behind me now. So that's a big thing for you to take into consideration, is making sure that you have the right generation software that matches with your amp specifically. So the backwards compatibility is, I write it in 3, it's not going to work on 1 or 2. Equally, if I write it in 1, it will work in 2 and 3. So you can go from the lowest to the highest, you just can't go from the highest to the lowest. So I write a patch years ago in Gen 1, and I've used it, kept it, loved it. I upgrade to a Gen 2. I wrote that, it'll work in a Gen 2. Equally, I have a Gen 2, which is what I was writing a lot of my stuff in. I upgraded to a 3. fantastic. The 2 will work on the 3 for the most part, but I cannot use what I've written on the 3, Generation 3 software, on my MK2 that I'm going to use to run Amplitude, and I'm going to do a couple of other experiments with it. So again, you cannot take a patch written in the highest and use it on the lowest, but you can take something that's written in the lowest and use it on the highest generation. There's a caveat with that, though. If you write it in Generation 1 or Generation 2, and then you're going to use that patch on a Gen 3 amp, you may not get the exact sounds that you were getting through the amp it was intended for. The Generation 2 to the Generation 3 is, from what I've been told, I spoke to Boss's gurus, and the way they explained it to me, it's almost like taking a flip phone and then dropping in your hand the latest generation of an iPhone. That's how much of a difference and an expansion they went from Generation 2 to Generation 3. And in a video a couple of weeks ago, I talked about that there is now a lag between the Boss Katana software and talking to your amp. There's a 5 to 9 second delay. And that is because there's just so much stuff that's crammed into this amp for them to get all of these cool modelings and sounds and everything else, that the technology is just not kept up. They're trying to come up with a patch or a fix, kind of like when you get the thing from iTunes and Apple, they're giving you another update. Well, that's what that's going to be. So one of the things you can take and look at is when you're going to download patches, a lot of times they're going to tell you what generation it's written in. So if you're in your Tone Studio and you go over to the Tone Exchange, which is included with your account when you sign up with Boss, you put in your name, rank, and serial number, and they figure out your amp and everything. You have access to this, and it's no charge. So we've got hundreds, possibly thousands of patches in here. And it tells you, as you can see. So if I'm in the MK2 version, I don't have it downloaded. I'm going through a web GUI just to show you. It tells you MK2, MK2, MK2. Now, all of these MK2 patches, if I wanted to download them, will work on my 3. Again, I may get a different sound to an extent because the technology is so much different, but it will work. So, and then if you go to another page where there are multiple, like the Katana Tone Lab, we're starting to share patches that we're building together. Again, if you go into it, it tells you Boss Katana. Right here, Katana MK2. So it will tell you what generation it was written in, typically, not all of them. I will make sure moving forward that any I put into the Katana Tone Lab Facebook page will have that in there. So the other thing I wanted to go over was, which I've had numerous people make comments to me specifically, as well as I've read a lot of other comments within the forums, is why doesn't it sound like what I'm hearing on the video or the audio sample? Again, I talked about different generations, but the equipment's also going to make a big difference. If I'm playing through my Chillcat Les Paul and you're trying to play through a Strat style guitar, this is going to sound different than this. It's 2 different guitars. Equally, if you're playing on a Strat style that has single coil pickups on it, and I'm playing through a guitar that's got humbuckers in it, or if I'm playing through something that's got a set of EMGs, I got a set of Zakk Wylde EMGs in my guitar, it's going to sound vastly different. So you have to take that into consideration as well. And as everybody knows, the real sound and everything comes out of the person's hands. The gear is a small part of it. So, I can learn every single note perfectly for Eruption. I'm not going to sound like Eddie Van Halen. Just not going to happen. There's multiple videos out there from people who played with Van Halen as their supporting act, and Eddie would go out and play there. Jerry Cantrell talks about it. Prime example. Cantrell's a huge fan of Eddie Van Halen, loved it, thought he was pretty good at getting some of his sounds and everything else. And then Eddie Van Halen goes out and starts playing Jerry Cantrell's guitar and amp setup. Sounds just like Eddie Van Halen. So it's definitely this is where I think 90% of the sound comes from all your different players. We can try to emulate it, we can copy it, but we're still never going to exactly sound like it. So that is definitely something to take into consideration when you're downloading patches that have audio samples for you to listen to and see if you like it or not. So the quick recap on this is there is no reverse compatibility. If it's written for a Gen 3, it's going to work on a Gen 3. It will not work on a 2 or a 1. If it's written on a Gen 1, you can use that patch in theory on Generation 2 and Generation 3 amps. So you take that as it may. That's really the whole thing about patch compatibility in a nutshell. And then the other thing you got to take into consideration is when you're downloading these patches, they're a starting point for you. Everybody's interpretation of a sound is different. Everybody has a different set of ears. Mine don't work as well as they used to. So as such, I don't like really high trebly sound. I prefer something that's got more of a low end. Hence why I run a 412 with my Katana 212 amp. I like that low end. Again, I grew up playing guitar in the 80s, was a prominent time that I was learning and playing a lot and playing live. So my sound kind of gravitates towards that. Highly compressed, lots of digital delay, think Rat, think Blue Murder, White Snake, the Ozzy, obviously, because I saw Randy live. That's what started this whole journey. So my sound gravitates towards that. You may like more mid, you may like more bass, you may like no bass. So when you're downloading these patches, look at them as a starting point for your sound. So if you see something that's quote unquote ZZ Top-ish, okay, download it, try it. You may go, what? This sounds like David Gilmour, not Billy Gibbons. Fine. Go up into the parameters, open up your Tone Lab, go into your editor, make all your changes. Tweak it. Get it to the point where it sounds the way you want it to with your guitar through your amp in your room with your ears. Then at that point, you've got the way you want it. Then if you feel that you want to share it with people, share it with people. Some people are going to download it and they're going to say, this is the biggest pile of shit I have ever heard. But fine, that's an interpretation. Everybody has an opinion. It's like an asshole. Everybody has one, just some smell worse than others. I keep saying that. But it's true. What you like is not what I'm going to like, or may not be. Who knows? We may have the exact same idea. So download them, try them, tweak them, then share them. Maybe someone else also said, this has got too much treble. I couldn't get it just right. And they like yours. Fantastic. The biggest thing I want to promote here is sharing. This is a community. We're all supposed to be friends. We're all in the same journey of trying to figure out the best ways to play guitar. What works for me may not work for you, like I said. Fantastic. If everybody sounded and played the exact same way, boy, would music be boring. It'd be like music today. Modern music, I don't understand. I don't even see how it's music in a lot of aspects. But I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So, in closing, compatibility of patches. Make sure that your patch will work with your amp. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email. Guitars with an S dot cigars with an S, INFO at gmail.com. And just put in there Boss Katana or question. And I'll be happy to get with you and answer your question. If we need to, I'll get on Zoom with you. We can, FaceTime or whatever. I'm here to help. And the biggest thing I want everybody to understand is I do not think you should ever have to pay for a patch, ever. I understand people need to make a living. This is kind of my soapbox moment. I've talked about it before. I think the people that are out there selling patches is a crime. There are other ways to make money. Everybody needs to make a living. I understand that, but I look at this as a community of friends who want to share the love of playing guitar. That's really what it comes down to. I read a statistic months ago that basically 90%, and that's even on the lower side, of all musical gear is bought by people like you and me. Hobby musicians, the guy who picks up his guitar and goes and plays at the local bar, not Eddie Van Halen's, not John Sykes, not Richie Blackmore's. That's a very small percentage of who buys this equipment. But the industry caters to that versus us. And that's what I'm trying to change here with the Katana Tone Lab and Guitars and Cigars. I don't want any of this stuff to seem like I'm a quote unquote professional, because I'm not. I want to help you achieve the sound, achieve the playability that you want, but to do it fiscally minded. I hate using the word budget gear because people think it's junk. There is now fiscally minded equipment out there that is absolutely outstanding. You do not have to spend $3,000 on a guitar that's going to play and sound awesome. I've got one back there that's two of them actually that are around $300, and that both of them are awesome guitars. Chillcats plays like $1,000 guitar, but that's information for more videos. So, all right, Brian here from Guitars and Cigars. We appreciate you checking out our stuff. We are on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on X. We're trying to get on TikTok, but TikTok is, I don't know. It's like dealing with politicians. There's no rhyme or reason to it at all. So if you really like what we're doing here, you're getting some information out of this. If nothing else, you think I'm just a big doofus and you're laughing the whole time, fantastic. Please like and comment on all the different socials that you check us out on. If you really like it and you think you're getting some information out of it that's useful, please subscribe to both of our YouTube channels, which is Guitars and Cigars and the Katana Tone Lab. So, all right, Brian here from both channels. This has been another episode of our Learn Your Katana, the Katana Classroom. And we appreciate you. Hope you have a great day. And we will talk to you next week. Smoke long, play loud, live